The pledge reminds me of this very simple but revolutionary idea that we are all operating under since the American experiment started. And that was this extraordinarily simple but revolutionary idea of the founders that the foundation of a moral and a just society is you and me. It's not a king, it's not a czar, it's not a faculty at a college. It is you and me using our God-given conscience. But what we must have to use that God-given conscience is freedom. And that really is what we're here to talk about today, is whether or not we have the freedom over our bodies and our family and our property. And that's really what this all gets down to. I started my activism with the income tax protest about 10 years ago. This income tax that was pushed by our good Republican Governor Don Sundquist was pushed by and large because of cost pressures from TennCare, from Medicaid. And if this income tax had gone through, it would have been an extraordinary structural change in Tennessee. Would have changed the state forever. And Don Sundquist, how many people were around during that time period? Don Sundquist was elected in 95, got reelected in 99, and 6 weeks after he got reelected, he changed his mind and he said, you know, I think this income tax is the way to go. And he had campaigned his first term against it, had remained against it during his reelection campaign, and then got reelected and 6 weeks said, it's the way to go. And the main reason he thought that it was the way to go is because his advisors told him that TennCare was growing so fast that there simply was no way to deal with a cost other than to have this extraordinary new source of revenue, which would have changed Tennessee forever. It did change Connecticut. Connecticut was the last state before Tennessee to pass an income tax. And Connecticut was on the Tax Foundation rankings was around 25, 28 in terms of the total rankings, total tax burden, state and local tax burden. After it passed the income tax in 1991, Connecticut went to 5, the next year it went to 3, and it's never been below 3 in the rankings of the states in total tax burden. The income tax was about growing the size of government. That's why the TEA was for it. That's why the TSEA, the Tennessee State Employees Association, was for it. And that's why so many people were pushing it. But the impetus, the main impetus, was healthcare costs from TennCare. And ironically, once Bredesen got into office after Sundquist, he cut quite a bit. Of course, he didn't cut as much as a lot of people wanted him to. But he cut quite a bit out of the TennCare prescription drug program. And if Don Sundquist had spent his time, his years, trying to reduce the cost of TennCare instead of pushing the income tax, we would never have had an income tax because TennCare was the main driver. There are many estimates about what TennCare is what is going to happen to Medicaid under Obamacare. Most estimates indicate that it will drive cost up between $1.5 and $3 billion for the state of Tennessee. In other words, we'll have a new push for a new income tax if Obamacare comes in full force. I have had an extraordinary opportunity over the last 2 weeks. Tennessee Tax Revolt now basically acts as a support group for taxpayer groups and Tea Party groups around the state. I have spoken to probably 24 Tea Party groups around the state about local tax issues. And it is just extraordinary the energy the political energy that's going on around this state in the Tea Party. It is the most energetic political force in the state of Tennessee right now. And these folks, where is the 2-minute warning? Is there a 2-minute? Ah, okay. Just wanted to give a. Yes. There is, these groups are all interested in one thing, basically, and that's freedom. How can we promote freedom? And they're doing an extraordinary job at the local level, and of course, they're also interested in the healthcare issues at the local level, city and county level. But they represent an extraordinary farm team of political activists that are becoming more and more active, and I think will take more of an active role in state politics and in healthcare issues. And again, back to this basic concept of what government is for. If, in fact, the foundation of a moral and a just society is the individual, then the role of government is to protect the freedom of the individual. And ultimately, that is the role of government, to preserve and protect the freedom of the individual to make those moral decisions. How in the world did we get to this place where we have an army of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., whose sole operating assumption is that you cannot lead your life in freedom? You'll mess it up. You'll be homophobic, you'll be sexist, you'll be racist, you'll defile the environment, and on and on and on. In other words, we have moved from a government that is supposed to be protecting our freedom, we have moved to a government that is the single biggest threat to our freedom. Rasmussen 2 years ago asked people, they said, what is the biggest threat to your freedom? 67% said the federal government. How in the world did we get here? How in the world did we get from this institution which we granted this sacred task? We said, what we want you to do, federal government, is to preserve and protect our freedom. And now that same institution that was given the sacred task of protecting our freedom, that institution is now the biggest threat to it. What a hell of a turnaround. We as citizens must demand that our elected representatives preserve and protect our freedom. We must get in their face and talk to them directly and let them know what we expect of them. Our elected representatives are not morally and intellectually superior to us. It is not their job. It is not their job to make decisions about our lives. It is their job to preserve and protect our freedom to make those decisions for ourselves. And obviously, one of the most basic decisions is the decision about your body and how you want it treated. In my presentation to Tea Party groups, I use slides from a book called The Cruel Radiance. I would suggest that you take a look at it if you ever get a chance. It is a book put together by a lady who documented photographers who documented political violence. And the picture on the front of the book is an extraordinarily powerful picture of a little girl about the age of my granddaughter. It was taken in 1975 by the Khmer Rouge. Khmer Rouge were a variant of the Communist Party that took over Cambodia in 1975. The first thing they did was to usher 1.8 million people out to the countryside, and they executed them. They had this very macabre custom of taking their pictures before they executed them. And this was the picture of a little girl that was shot 2 days after the picture was taken. Now, were the Cambodians made of any different flesh and blood than you and I? No. Did they care any less about freedom than you and I? No. They simply did not act to protect their freedom. And if we don't act to protect our freedom, it will be taken away from us. And medical freedom, the freedom to make decisions about who treats us and how our bodies are treated and what the cost is and the scope of the treatment, that is one of the most basic and fundamental freedoms we have. And if we don't fight for that freedom one-on-one, we will lose it. History is replete with example after example after example. I believe that America is exceptional because probably no more than 20% of us are willing to demand to live in freedom. We don't ask, we don't plead, we don't beg, we demand to live in freedom. That is what is exceptional about America to me. And the second we stop demanding to live in freedom, we will lose it. Look at North Korea, look at Iran, look at Cuba, look at Venezuela. It's happening all around us, and it will happen to us, believe you me. If we don't act to preserve our freedom, it will be taken away from us. And that's what each and every one of us must do individually. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Ralph.